Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. Today, the discontinued and much loved 38mm brass movement platinum white gold dial FP Journe Octa automatique réserve de marche. A watch that is to many the very picture in the mind's eye of an FP Journe watch. Classically beautiful, it was one of the original automatic references made from 2001 to 2005 with the brass caliber you see on the back. And yes, that is Journe claiming that brass caliber production continued into 2005. The 38mm case, however, long gone and much sought. That's the diameter, 38, 10.4 millimeters thick from lug tip to lug tip, 44.6 millimeters with a 20 millimeter spacing in between the lugs. I prefer the Journe 38s. They just wear better on my wrist. My wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference. You can see down the barrel, over the top, and then the cuff shot. Keep in mind, I'm pulling the strap pretty tight. It'll easily slide under a dress cuff. I recommend it for wrists as small as 13.5 centimeters circumference, so a watch for him and for her. We have large, medium, and small rectangular scale alligator leather, an unusual transitional cut of the hide. There's some bolstering closer to the case. We've got a semi-gloss Bordeaux colored strap, maybe a light Bordeaux, folded edge, monotone stitch, small round scale alligator leather on the bottom. One might even say this is the color of beet juice. Round scale gator on the bottom of a strap is much more expensive than calfskin, but also lasts much longer, and a watch like this deserves the best. Pull tab spring bar, you can see that right there. Pop it out with your thumbnail. No need to use tools to remove or replace the strap. FP Journe factory strap, have no doubts. Because the lugs on Journe watches are always drilled close to the case for better small wrist fit, because the pivot centers move inboard. If a straight spring bar were used here, you wouldn't be able to move the strap. Here, it's fully articulated with no impediment to its motion because of the use of the curved spring bar, and Journe here with a platinum buckle for a platinum watch. Okay, let's go through all of the period quirks. Obviously, 38mm case discontinued. And also worth mentioning, Eleanor French-made case is discontinued. So we have the mark of Eleanor and then the two French Eagle hallmarks. That was discontinued about mid-2008 when Eleanor ceased to make Journe cases. Journe bought the French company and moved it to Geneva, where it continues to make his cases to this day. So you've got the Eleanor maker's mark and the French hallmarks. You've also got the Swiss hallmark because of the final assembly of the watch. 02, there was a period up to about mid-2005 when the case maker stamped the case with the case's year of manufacture. That usually corresponds pretty closely to the watch's manufacture, but if, say, case is made in November and the watch is made in January, you can see how they wouldn't line up, but it is a clue as to when, in terms of time frame, the watch was made. Brass movement, long gone, phased out starting in the middle of 2004. The brass calibers are not as valuable from a commodity standpoint as the gold ones, but they're more valuable from a collectible standpoint because there are just fewer of them. The rotor is 22 karat, that's gold, but the movement, bridges and plates, rhodium-plated brass. Also, though you can't see it, this is the earliest version of the Octa 1300, so it uses bidirectional winding rather than the later unidirectional that came online around 2007. Free sprung 3 Hz beat rate, 5 position adjusted, which is the high horology and chronometer standard. We have a physically massive balance that makes up in inertia what it lacks in beat rate, and it's free sprung for durability and protection against shock. The watch has one enormous meter-long mainspring that's only a millimeter thick, and the idea here with Journe was that he didn't like the fluctuation that occurs in force to the escapement on an automatic watch, and he wanted an automatic watch that could keep chronometer grade time without being manually wound at the same time every day like automatic movements are during a COSC test. So his problem with automatic winding was if you're not winding at the same time every day manually, you're going to have 1 day of power reserve, 2 days of power reserve, 5 days of power reserve, 3 days of power reserve, and that would cause fluctuating force to the escapement, which would result in very irregular timekeeping. So he devised this one enormous but very thin mainspring with a super flat plateau from the first 120 hours of power reserve. So his thought here is that it doesn't matter whether you have 24, 48, 96 hours of power reserve in the barrel. The watch is going to keep consistent time because the torque supplied to the escapement is constant. Now here's the thing, if you're not going to wear it, he wants you to wind it every 120 hours because although 120 hours is the chronometric power reserve during which it will keep the best time, it will actually run for 160 hours before it literally stops, but it will not be a superior timekeeper after 120 hours elapsed. Let's really quickly take a look at some of the details on the dial side now. We'll go back to the movement in a moment. You can see that we've got the distinctive silver subdial. The primary dial is white gold and media blasted, and then we have a double-digit date with flush discs, always a feather in the cap for a watchmaker to get those discs flush on a big date. A quick set system. There is not a hacking second. That's just not a thing with Journe watches other than the elegant. And then we have the power reserve, which works conventionally. There are some Journe watches where 0 means fully wound. This is not one of the marine chronometer style power reserves. This indicates 120 hours when it is fully wound. And of course, we have dial side assembly screws, which are a long-time styling signature of Journe, and this lovely polished and beveled steel bezel framing the inner dial. Back to the case back. Okay, 30 meters water resistant. Don't take it swimming. We've got the Holt head screws, so hopefully you won't try to open this yourself. The movement's fairly large at 30.4 millimeters in diameter. It all pivots on 29 jewels. People sometimes ask me, why is the rotor off center? You can see it isn't quite the size of the movement, and that's because this movement was always designed to drive complications. So something about the complication mating surface for modules on the dial side dictated offsetting the winding system on the case back. That's just how it worked out. The finish on these Journe watches, the early ones, is very rustic. I mean, I can see the milling marks on the bevels from here without optics. So you buy these for the same reason you buy a George Daniels, the historical significance and the mechanical innovation that is embodied in the watch, not because it's decorated like, say, a Romain Gaultier. And Journe's position in history is one of influence and significance, not necessarily unconditional beauty, and he's fine with that. He had something to say, and he said it well. The watches are instantly identifiable, and through the 2000s, Journe was winning a GPHG award, it seemed, every single year, including 3 Aiguilles d'Or. So his method is certainly a sound one, and this is a landmark piece. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.